All right, so here we have a Koken Barber chair that we're going to be doing some maintenance on it. One of the biggest, or I guess one of the major complaints about Koken chairs is that the chair is either reclining by itself or it's not reclining whatsoever. What I did here is I kind of took it apart, took the recliner apart just to kind of show you the different mechanisms. Just so you can have an understanding of what I'm doing. Now, what I basically did is I took off these spring screws here. So basically these go on here, right? I'll put this one here. So that one goes there. This other one goes here. You get the picture, right? So what I did is I basically just dissected this whole thing. So I'm taking this apart just to kind of show you what each component does so you have an understanding, right? So these spring screws, what they do is the spring creates tension. So the more you tighten these screws, the more this clamp is gonna put pressure on this rod. So obviously, if I over tighten these screws here, it's gonna put so much pressure on this rod that when you engage the recliner, it's not going to do anything. And what I mean by engage the recliner is this. So the Koken chairs, they all work very similar to where, when you engage the recliner, what it's basically doing is it's pushing a rod and it's opening that clamp, right? So I engage the recliner, and when you engage that recliner, what it does, let me turn it around over here. What it does, it spins this guy here, right? And it's basically pulling that rod out. So these springs are pushing this clamp tight, but when you engage the recliner, technically what's happening, and obviously I'm exaggerating, is this clamp is opening up, right? So this clamp is opening up, which is allowing this recliner rod to recline the chair back and forth. It's literally a fine line between a great balance of enough tension on this, but also enough tension on this screw here to engage this recliner piston. This plays a very important role because as you tighten this screw, what it's doing is putting pressure on this rod. And the more pressure you put, the more it's gonna open. Again, I'm exaggerating. As you tighten this screw up, this clamp is basically opening. But at the same time, again, these screws are putting tension. So again, like I mentioned before, it's a fine balance between having the right tension on these screws and then the right amount of tension on this screw here. So I basically like to start off at 0, and what I mean by that is I'm basically gonna reset everything. All right, so I'm loosening up this screw, and I'm gonna put on these right here. Okay, so I actually had to change out this screw, so that's why there's a break in between the video. But pretty much now that everything is loose, everything is ready to be tightened, again, make sure that the chair itself is in the lock position. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Engage the brake. If your chair doesn't have a brake, then just make sure that the handle is all the way back. All right, cool. So now I'm gonna start off by turning these spring screws one full turn. Half a turn, full turn, half a turn, and full turn. This screw here in the middle, and again, once you kind of feel the tension, as you're tightening it up, once you feel like, okay, it's definitely touching that rod in the back, and now it's giving me tension or pressure. Now we're gonna do just a tiny, less than a quarter of a turn, okay? So right now, it's basically in the 12 and 6 o'clock position. I'm turning it to around the 2 o'clock position. All right, so now let's go ahead and test it out. So before we even engage the recliner, I'm gonna give it a quick tug and see if it goes back by its own. So see, the chair is not going back on its own. That's a good sign. So let me turn the chair around. So I had the chair in the lock position. Now I'm gonna engage the recliner. Left handle up, back. And see, chair goes back, forward, perfect. Now, again, if you feel that it's too tight, too stiff, usually what we like to do is we like to spray a little bit of a 3-in-1 oil or even some clipper oil, honestly, in these joints. This chair is obviously it's been freshly restored, so you know it's got everything. All the joints are technically new, so that's why it might be a little stiff. And I haven't oiled these, so try putting in some oil, and that's normally the first thing that I do. If for whatever reason, once you put the oil, it's still a little too stiff. So again, engage the recliner. I didn't engage it all the way, sorry. Engage the recliner. For me, this is comfortable, but again, some people might want it a little loose. I'm gonna show you something else that you can do. So, okay, let me bring it back. Oh, sorry. Engage the brake. Now let's make some fine adjustments. Now, before I even go about tightening up this guy more, which you can do. So let's say I go ahead and let's actually do that. So let's go ahead and tighten this guy up a little bit more. So right now it's like at the 2 o'clock position. Let's just turn it a little bit more. Right now it's like at 2:30, the 2:30 o'clock position. So I did, again, a tiny bit of a turn. Now, again, before I test the recliner, I'm putting pressure back to make sure it doesn't go back on its own. It's not. Engage the recliner. And yeah, see, it's gonna get smoother and smoother every time. Now, what happens if now let's go into the scenario. What happens if you tighten this guy up too much? And I'm gonna show you. So if you keep putting more pressure on this guy, so like right there, I did about half of a turn. What this is basically doing, it's opening up this clamp. Oh, sorry. It's opening up this clamp right here. So I tighten it up a bit and see the chair's going back by itself without me even putting the recliner. How can you fix that? Well, again, just loosen this guy up. So just do small, tiny increments. Again, I don't have the recliner engaged, but see, it's kind of going back, see, when I'm putting pressure. And also, you want to be careful not to put too much pressure because you can break the calf rest. But I'm going to loosen it up a little bit more. See, it's still kind of going in and out. Loosening it up a little bit more. Now that's comfortable. Let me engage the recliner. Yeah, see, smooth. If I were to put some oil, clipper oil, 3-in-1 oil in those joints, it'll be a lot smoother. One thing you never want to do is you never want to oil this bar because you do need it for it to be rough for some good friction. Oop, sorry. You definitely don't want to oil any of this. You want to put grease on any of this. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's pretty much a fine balance between having the right amount of tension on these 2 spring screws and setting up enough pressure on this guy right here. Once you're satisfied, once the chair's not going back on its own, once the chair is actually reclining perfectly, then what you want to do, and it's really important because if you don't tighten up the set screw, the chair eventually over time is going to get loose. So go ahead and tighten up this set screw. You don't have to get too crazy. But yeah, that's it. I tighten it up and now the chair is set. So let me show you guys. Okay, so brake is engaged. See, the chair is not going back by itself. Engage the recliner. Chair reclines by itself. Put it back forward. Stays in place. Engage the recliner. And there. Done deal.